Hello again, this is John Hind talking to Dr. Sue Palmer-Conn, divorce coach, about the subject of the coach-supported mediation process. Sue, can we go on to consider 5 challenges I have in mind, often faced by separating couples in mediation? What I have in mind is where they're working with a divorce coach. Working with a divorce coach can make all the difference between, of course, mediation succeeding or failing, which we've talked about. I'd like to focus on how a divorce coach can specifically work with their clients in relation to these kind of 5 main challenges. The first one I have in mind revolves around kind of how coaches can help their clients with getting the right information to them and helping them signpost them and giving them pathways to the right professionals at the right time when they're needed most and so on. That kind of area of provision of information. What are your thoughts around this subject?
Yeah, I mean, people go into divorce, especially people going into divorce now since the new divorce laws have come in. You know, they might talk to friends and family who went through the old process. Well, you know, the very fact that there's no blame and shame needed to be brought into a divorce these days makes a huge difference. But most people going into divorce go into it blind. They don't understand what the process is. You know, they think that, you know, divorce is, you know, all you do is sign a piece of paper. That's okay for the legal side, but then you've got the financial side and the children's side of divorce. And it's those that cause most of the trauma, if you like. And it's understanding when, you know, both parties have the same package of information so that they both know what to be expected out of a mediation process.
I guess I really get picking up that point, the same package of information, because from my experience, well, formerly as a family solicitor for many years, is that where people have 2 solicitors often receiving different information about the law, it can create an unnecessary, actually, polarization or division where it needn't happen. So I think this accessing 2 people getting their information from the same source, if that can happen, which I think it can, which you and I are talking about, and if someone like the divorce coach can help the 2 people going through divorce to help them with the information, understanding from the same information given, it can make a huge difference, I think.
I mean, if they work with a divorce coach that's been thoroughly trained in the divorce process from start to finish, then whether they work with a divorce coach as an individual or a couple, they should be getting very similar information.
Yeah.
It's where they talk to family, friends, helpful, in inverted commas, people that have gone through divorce themselves, and all they get is horror stories. And what we're trying to avoid by having coach-supported mediation is they come and they talk to one person who isn't going to take sides, isn't going to push them into litigation, is going to do everything to keep everything as on an even keel as possible. When they've got the support of a divorce coach in addition, that's going to keep them emotionally stable as well.
No, and that emotional stability, which we're going to come and look at in more detail, is so important. I think it's crucial, and the more, I guess, psychologically ready and emotionally regulated or secure couples feel when they come into a process like mediation, which is what we're talking about, the better, the more likely they are to be successful, which is what again we're talking about. And I think the coach again has that crucial role to play when it comes to helping couple get the best out of themselves, isn't it? Because many people, when they go through divorce, they have these great resources, but they just lose their way. They kind of don't know where to go, who to speak to, where to get the information. There's so many unknowns, and the coach is that kind of compass that's, you know, helping them find information at the right time.
And to bring them back down to reality.
Yeah.
You know, to be reasonable, not to expect the earth, but to be satisfied with having the moon instead.
Yeah, because the need can be, as we know, to punish,
Yeah,
blame, judge, and so on. And they can be very powerful emotions driving behavior and so on. And but they're not very friendly emotions to mediation, where of course they're trying to sort something out
right.
together. No, and again, I guess it comes back to the coach will have a good network of people who they can point the couple to, whether working individually or together, to get the information from. And again, it is that, isn't it? It is, as you were making the point so eloquently just now, they're getting the right people. I mean, family and friends may mean well, but they're not experts, and
No.
there's a lot of projection, I suspect, of their own experiences, their own beliefs going on, which may or may not be that helpful.
And they're always biased as well.
Of course, to protect, and yeah.
It's natural that you want to protect your own, but it's not always helpful.
No, indeed.
Sometimes you have to get this dose of realism and realization that where you had one pot for the whole family, now that pot is divided into two.
And that's the reality for most cases, isn't it? There is only a finite pot of resources there's very few cases where there's more than enough to go around and so on. But most, you're right, most couples, especially at the moment, in today's difficult economy, most cases, clients I'm seeing in mediation, there is a finite resource. So if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of move us on to the next challenge, which is we've touched on actually, which is the emotional challenge. There's this notion that I'd like us to, if you don't mind, to talk a little bit about when a couple separate. More often than not, they are at different points in that emotional journey. One may well have spent months or indeed years reaching the conclusion the marriage is over, and the other person, it may come as a complete shock, for example. So there's often a person leaving, and the person left, and they may be very, very different stages in that Kubler-Ross, that emotional journey, and that what they're experiencing at the moment. And this is where a coach may again be very, very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross grief cycle was developed to help people cope with bereavement, and the divorce process is part of it's similar to the grieving process, but I think it's much more complex than a bereavement process. Yes, you go through the same sort of things. You've got the shock of the bereavement, you've got the shock of the divorce, you've got denial, this isn't happening to me. Very often it then goes into anger. So the emotions go from being very passive to active, and they can flip up and down depending on the weather almost. Once you've got through that anger phase, you might start bargaining, I'm going to tell my story to everybody, but which version of the story are you telling? And are you just bringing up all these memories? Whereas, because your brain is constructed to think about negatives, and we want to try and find the positive spin, or at least sort of get people to look at both sides of every story. Now, you're talking about the left and the leaver. The person that's leaving or has left is obviously going to be much further on because they've had more time to process, and it's very difficult to understand for the person that's been left behind why this other person is ready to move on. It's not long ago he or she was professing undying love, and now they're moving on. Are they not thinking about me in all this? What have I done wrong? But there's always two sides to every story.
Or three or four, or five.
Yeah. And in the vast majority of cases, it's breakdown in communication leads to these emotional upheavals.
And do you not find, Sue, and do you not find that as a coach, and I certainly find as a mediator and coach, that do you not find that the more your client understands what it is they're going through, the more we can help them be aware of this grief cycle, this emotional journey,
Yeah.
the more they can then understand what they're going through, the better it helps them to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's helping people understand these emotions, where they're coming from, how they can manage them. I'm not saying suppress them, because you do need to let your emotions out, but you do need to learn how to manage them so that it's not ruling your decision-making process.
No, and isn't it the case? I'm thinking of Marshall Rosenberg here and the nonviolent communication, the kind of model. Isn't it the case that often what I say to my clients sometimes, and I don't know how you help them manage, I often say, look, emotions are, as you said, making your point, it's perfectly natural emotion. We mustn't suppress, can't suppress. Find a way to express them in a kind of managed way if you can, because they are important clues and indicators to unmet needs, to needs, that things that need to be met. And whatever that is. And that's where the conversation needs to be had, isn't it? The things are important to each person. The emotions might be simply an expression or an indicator of those things that aren't being met, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's helping people to understand the source of the emotions and how they can be used in a much more positive way.
Yeah, but much better than I did. But yeah, absolutely. And the more we can educate, help our clients with insight, self-awareness, understanding. So I think, the better resourced, more resilient they'll be when they come through, which is what we're talking about here, is mediation, to have that conversation together.
Yeah, and it's helping them to get to that point of acceptance that, they have to take responsibility for their part in the breakdown.
That can be difficult, can't it?
Oh, absolutely. Learning forgiveness of themselves as well as the other person, and looking for points of gratitude. When you're actually going through divorce, that seems almost impossible. But when you're coming out the other side and you start looking, what we're trying to do is get people to look forward, not backwards. And the only way you're going to be able to move forward is to have these, taking responsibility, finding forgiveness, and being grateful.
And do you know what? Let's pick on that last point before we move on to the kind of third challenge, which is power imbalances. I often say to my clients, and you may well do the same, see mediation as a gift to each other, an opportunity you're giving to each other to in the present moment and move on in the future, to create a third narrative together, to look after your kids together. It's an opportunity that's presented. I'm not giving it to you, you're giving it to each other, because without you both taking part in this fully, openly, honestly, transparently, it's not going to work. And interestingly, most people respond very positively to that notion of a gift, to be grateful to each other, and maybe that's a spark sometimes that people need a reminder. That's a very good point. Thank you for that. Yeah. Power imbalances. Well, gosh, where do we start? They're very fluid, constant, all around us, and certainly in mediation, we've got two people working together. Perhaps it's difficult to know where to start here, really, but maybe some example of how they might manifest themselves in mediation. How might a power imbalance, how might we see it? How might the clients experience it when working together in mediation? What forms might it take?
Oh gosh, it's how long is a piece of string?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Let me ask. What about this? What about intellectual power imbalance? Financial, I guess. I don't know. Just a few. I mean, you'll know better than me, because you're trained in all this and psychologist and so on. But I guess they exist in so many different forms. One of the challenges I'm just thinking where a coach might be able to help is helping their clients recognize where the client needs empowerment. So where there is a power, where they feel powerless, they might need power. There might be anything. Might need more information. Might need Where just so.
And the thing is that even, you know, and traditionally we think of the man as having more power than the woman. The man might be the main breadwinner, but that doesn't automatically give them power in the relationship. And so, you know, we need to think not just in terms of financial power, but also emotional power. And as you said before, intellectual power. And this is where the divorce coach can come in, you know, helping both parties to fully understand what the process entails, which will redress the balance of intellectual power, helping them to understand how the financial resolution can be brought to a mutually beneficial closure, and helping them to understand that, you know, it's not just having the income, but it's how you're going to utilize that income afterwards, and giving them a much more realistic perspective. You know, finances are finite. And, you know, if they haven't got lots of investments, you know, if they're not very high net worth couple, then they're going to have to be much more realistic about their share of the pie. We know that, you know, 50-50 split is the starting point, and it's flexible in either direction depending on needs, long-term and short-term. But it's how to realistically utilize that share of the pie so that they're not punishing themselves or punishing their soon-to-be ex.
Yeah, it is, and it's where it is finite that you've got these competing interests. You know, the one might want the house, and that may be the main asset. And so, how do you the challenge around that? But just I think of one example as I'm listening to you, where power often manifests itself or shows itself, is where where the children are living with one parent and the other parent has control of the money, and so you've got one feeling powerless because they want to see their children, but they have the finances, and the other having the children, and they use these things against. You know, what do people do when they feel powerless? They do things to get power back.
Yeah.
So I see that quite a lot of mediation, and I think, and I'll tell you what, I think a coach working behind what I call behind the scenes with either or both of them to raise their awareness about what's happening, and to speak truth to power, to say to the person, I'm feeling this because, and so on. That often I think can be quite a powerful way of dealing with it.
And it's stopping them from weaponizing the children and the money.
Yes. Yeah. So they can get to have that conversation you were just talking about, which is looking in reality, pragmatically, constructively, future solution outcome focused at what they've got, because it's without and, you know,
where there are children, it's so important to make the whole process child-centered. Keep the children in the center. And one thing I say to my clients, you know, we've talked about anchoring in the divorce training, and one of the most powerful anchors is having a picture of the children on the table in the middle, so both partners can see the children.
So true.
And, you know, if they keep that child or the children in the forefront of everything, so that, you know, every child is entitled to have the love and be loved, or, you know, to love and be loved by both parents.
Those core needs, aren't they? To feel secure and to feel loved, and to have each parent's permission, loving permission, isn't it? That's those, to have a good relationship. No, absolutely. And by the way, this whole area of child-centered and child-inclusive for work that where mediators get involved in is something that I will probably be coming back to talk to you about more length about. So it's such an important area, and helping, again, I think an area also where coaches can play a crucial part in helping their clients remain child-centered in their conversations, and maybe child inclusive where the child's of the right age and understanding maturity to bring in the voice of the child and so on. That can be very important as well. Final area I wanted to, well, not this penultimate area, because the final area, challenging area I want to bring on it will be in the third video. But this something area which we've touched on is this notion of having difficult conversations. So where, for example, picking up on the area we're currently talking about, power imbalances, how do you think, or how do you think a coach can support, help, assist each client to come into mediation? What's involved in helping them to prepare to have often difficult conversations, to speak truth to power, to express their need, to talk about their priorities and so on. How do you think a coach might be able to help with those? What kind of things do you think a coach might be able to do to support that?
I mean, there's a number of aspects of this. We need to help them to moderate their behaviour so that it prevents defensiveness. You know, we know the old adage, attack is the best form of defence. Well, it's not in mediation, but we see it so often. And helping people not to become, attacking and provoking defensiveness is the first point. The second one we've touched on with the emotional regulation, making it a solution-focused behaviour. And then helping people to understand the process of negotiation and how to put forward a strong case. Then again, this comes through everything, is effective communication, helping them to listen carefully to the other person's point of view and using non-inflammatory language. I'm sure you must hear language being used inappropriately. And then things like flexible thinking, helping them to generate a number of options, not just go for the best case scenario, but also put forward a realistic proposal.
You made some excellent, really, really good points. You really deconstruct that really well. Because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, how do I also do that as a mediator as well, as I'm listening to you talk about how the coach might support the client? And just putting those together, I'm thinking, what do I actually do? And one of the first things I do, which is what you were talking about, is before they start talking about their approach and options and so on, I'll ask them to have a conversation with each other, which I'll help them do as a mediator and or coach, about what it is that's important to them. What does the outcome, whatever it might be, whatever subject, children, money, what does it need to achieve for each of them? What values, or what's important to them? And to elicit all those things and help them build, I call them building blocks, whatever, and then to make a really good defined list of those. And then, of course, we can then coach, working with each of them or both of them, and mediator can help them come up with ideas to build solutions around those things of importance. And that's, of course, when you make the point again very eloquently about this needs to be open, curious, humble. My ideas aren't the only ideas. Yours are, great, and all that. And
exactly. And not be accusatory in their talk. Using I sentences, not you sentences.
And asking questions.
Yeah.
Curious, again, I'm sure you do the same, but where I hear clients starting to make statements, if you had done this and thought, or I need this, and if they can flick it around to questions. Yeah. So I don't know, Sue, I'm in mediation with you, and you say, I might say to you, well, that was a great idea, but I'm just wondering what your view is about how that meets the priorities we were just talking about. Can we have a conversation around that? So I think, I often find, again, but that can be really challenging. And that can be challenging. As a mediator, that can be so challenging. And I find where my clients are working with coaches behind the scenes, again, to have that kind of conversation, they do so much better.
Yeah.
If I'd say most succeed, where they're having
Yeah. And getting them to understand that it's okay to ask for a timeout.
Yes.
You know, so that they're not going to give an emotional knee-jerk reaction or a firm no or a yes that they might regret. But can I just have 5 minutes to clear my head and think that through?
Absolutely. This giving them the permission to feel secure, that they don't have to make decisions there and then.
Yeah.
You know, this because mediation, as you know, and can feel under quite a lot of pressure in the moment. And I often actually always say to my clients, even if you can reach a successful outcome here, proposals and so on, you need to give yourselves time to reflect on those, however long you need, time to talk to whoever you need to talk to, if it's just lawyers and support or your coach, so that you can bring yourselves and get yourselves into a position where you have enough confidence to say, yes, we've reached it together, yes, we've thought about it, and yes, we want to move ahead. And that, again, that coach can be so important in that post-mediation time, reflection. Reflect with your coach, you know, reality test with your coach. In between sessions, work with your coach. Yeah, that can be so important. Okay, Sue, I mean, this is fantastic. I'm sure we can talk all day. But what I want to do is bring us on to that final question. The question is, in every case, is mediation suitable? And so I want to bring that into this video, if I may, and bring that into the last video, and that final challenge. We can talk about that, about suitability for mediation, and talk about that, and then bring the whole thing to an end, if that's okay with you. Is that it?
Fine.
Brilliant. So goodbye for now, and I'll see you in a moment. Don't go away, viewers. There's some good stuff coming up in the next video. Bye for now.
Bye.
I'll see you in a minute soon.